It's the first time I've ever been there.
It's the first time for me.
Way down beneath the ocean, that's where I wanna be.
G'day, and welcome to the undersea world of diving. I'm Paul Muggleston, originally from Australia. It wasn't until I came here to America that I realised what I've been missing out on all these years. The world down there, beneath the ocean waves. Throughout my diving course, I always wished there was something to make learning a little easier for me. I had an excellent instructor, the diver's manual for reference, but there's still quite a few things I couldn't grasp. I hope this tape will help you. And in the future, when you're a fully qualified diver, you'll return to it time and time again, both for reference and as a full refresher course. Throughout your scuba diving certification course, you'll receive a lot of valuable information. I hope this tape helps you absorb it. Do not consider this tape a course on diving. It is intended to make your learning and mastering of the sport that much easier. But you must take one of the recognised diving courses in order to receive your certification, and no number of tapes or books can replace the value of a qualified instructor. The skills discussed in this tape will be practiced many times in the pool. Then you'll have the opportunity of demonstrating them to your instructor in the open water. Before we embark on any sporting venture, it pays to have a little basic knowledge, and diving is no exception. The one prerequisite before starting a diving course, you must be able to swim and tread water without water wings. The swimming evaluation is very simple and requires only that you can swim a modest distance using any stroke, then tread water for approximately 5 minutes. Though it may sound a lot when you haven't been swimming for a couple of years, it's not. And you'll definitely find swimming an advantage when you're half a mile out to sea playing in a kelp bed with the local natives. They've been swimming all their lives. Diving is built on the buddy system. You always dive with a companion. He's there to help you in the unlikely event of trouble, helping you put on gear, checking gear before a dive, and sharing the excitement of your adventures. He or she will probably appreciate your ability to swim too. The principle of diving is simple. You wish to be in a controlled situation on top of the water, somewhere between the top and the bottom, or on the bottom. To gain control of buoyancy, we use two pieces of equipment. A weight belt, which allows the diver to establish negative buoyancy, that is to sink, and a buoyancy compensator, a clever device that allows air to be added or released at will. Fill it with air, we rise. Release the air, we sink. When we're floating on the surface in our BC, short for buoyancy compensator, we have positive buoyancy. When we are on the bottom, we have negative buoyancy. And when we're hovering somewhere in between, we have neutral buoyancy. So it's easy to figure out. If we are neutrally buoyant and we add air to the BC, we'll rise due to positive buoyancy, and if we release air, we sink due to negative buoyancy. Now let's look at some of the other marvels of modern science that enable us to dive freely, safely, and in relative comfort. The mask and snorkel you choose are critical to your diving enjoyment. The mask should fit snugly around your face, and when you inhale through your nose should stay on your face without support by the hand or strap. Look for a snorkel with a comfortable mouthpiece and a wide enough bore to get plenty of air to your lungs without undue effort. Remember to position the snorkel on the left side of your head. Your instructor will help you. By the way, If no preventive measures are taken, your mask can fog up and make visibility a bit difficult. Bottled defog is available, or if you prefer, a bit of good old human spit will do the same thing. Rub it around on the lens, rinse it, and from then on, you shouldn't face any problems. These oversized duck's feet are called fins. They come in assorted sizes and designs and are essential for mobility. In fact, they're the only source of power you should use for forward motion underwater. Your instructor will advise you on the size and flexibility best suited to you. The use of a buddy shoulder for stability will make donning your fins much easier. Note how you put on the right fin with your left hand, then turn around and use your right hand for your left fin. And they're not flippers, by the way. Flipper was a mammal that made movies. Your wetsuit serves a dual purpose. First, it keeps you warm, and second, offers protection from sharp underwater rocks and objects. If you want to purchase your own wetsuit, consult your instructor. There are many makes and thicknesses available, and the way your wetsuit fits can determine whether you're going to spend your life under the ocean with unexpected trickles of chilly water down your spine, or be comfortably surrounded by warmth. Believe me, it does make a difference. Gloves and booties are other necessary accessories, and yes, they do keep your hands and feet warm. But like the wetsuit, their other advantage is protection from sharp objects or rocks. Underwater, your hands and feet become especially soft and vulnerable. Your instructor will fill you in on the selection of these items. Now that you're all dressed up and know where to go, there are 3 other little gems of equipment you should become familiar with before you take that giant step into the shallow end of the pool. Everyone will require a different amount of weight, depending on body density, the buoyancy of the wetsuit, and bulk of the buoyancy compensator. Without a weight belt, you'll float like a cork forever. The principle is to have just enough weight to help you descend when the air is released from your BC. Your instructor will help determine the amount of lead that's right for you. Now it's time to look at our air supply, the means by which we can breathe underwater, and a great time to start instilling the #1 rule of diving. Never hold your breath. Always breathe continuously. Never, ever, ever hold your breath. Breathe slowly, deeply, and continuously. The tank holds compressed air. When hooked up to a regulator, it will supply air on demand. Connecting the regulator to the tank always confused me, and yet it's so simple if the basic steps are followed. There are 2 stages on a single hose regulator, the mouthpiece or second stage, and a first stage which attaches to the tank valve. Undo the yoke screw and remove the dust cover from the first stage. With the second stage and hose on the right, place the regulator over the top of the valve so that the air outlet of the tank meets the air inlet of the regulator. Remember, the second stage hose is going to come over your right shoulder, so it should be on the right-hand side. Turn the yoke screw until it's finger tight. Then, making sure your pressure gauge is facing down to the ground, gently open the air valve. Turn the valve all the way. Then turn it back half a turn. This way, your buddy can easily check your air supply at any time to see if your air is in fact turned on. You're now ready to take a sample breath. Place a mouthpiece in your mouth and breathe normally. Remember to breathe slowly and deeply. The pressure gauge attached to the regulator system will register how many pounds per square inch are available in the tank. From the moment we begin our dive, we refer to this gauge regularly, as it's the best assessment of how much air we have. But keep in mind, the gauge is only an instrument, and allowance should be made for instrument error. Always end every dive with no less than 500 pounds of air remaining in the tank. The tank strap of your BC slips over the top of the tank and clamps into place, allowing you to carry the tank on your back. The inflator hose coming from the first stage connects to the buoyancy compensator and allows you to add or release air at will.
The equipment manufactured for the sport of scuba diving today is extremely advanced and reliable. It's highly unlikely you'll have any problems with modern equipment if you take good care of your gear. But in the unlikely event of you or your buddy running out of air or having some type of malfunction, it's really comforting to know that you have an alternate air source.
The most common alternate air source is called an octopus, an extra second stage attached to your regulator. The hose typically is longer than the primary regulator, and often the mouthpiece is a different colour. Another alternate air source you may want to consider is a completely separate mini tank with its own regulator. This device will supply enough air to surface safely from any depth within sport diving limits. One final point. Whenever you're not using your tank or holding onto it, lay it on its side. If it's laying down already, it can't get knocked down. And a runaway tank can be dangerous, costly, and might ruin your day, or even your foot. Congratulations. Now you're ready to try it all in the water. And believe me, the first breath underwater is the most exhilarating you'll ever take. Before most water entries, you'll want to put enough air in your BC so when you hit the water you float, rather than join the Beatles' Yellow Submarine before you're ready. Having checked all the gear is in place and operating properly on land, we can now take our first breath underwater. You'll learn a number of methods for entering the water, like the giant stride, which we'll look at shortly. For now, we're walking gingerly down the pool steps. First, because we're feeling a little bulky, and second, because the pool is only 3 feet deep, and we don't want to make an impression on the pool bottom, or the pool owner for that matter.
Okay, I want you to put the mouthpiece in your mouth. You want to concentrate on taking nice, slow, deep, easy breaths. Nice and relaxed, okay? It's going to feel a little strange at first because there's going to be a little resistance that you're not used to, but you'll quickly get used to it, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to go down on our knees, all right? Now just get used to breathing underwater for a few minutes, okay? Now remember, it's unnatural for us to be under there, so it's going to feel a little strange at first, but you'll very quickly get used to it, and you'll start to look around and see what's down there. In this case, nothing, all right? So let's try it. Regulate the mouth, take a couple of slow, deep breaths, then you're going to have to let the air out of your BC, we'll go down, okay?
This is the real beginning, and it only gets better from here.
No matter what sport or career we embark on these days, it appears there's the fun parts and the academic parts. Now, if you happen to be a heart and lung specialist, you'll probably find this part of the course pretty riveting. But to the uninitiated like myself, I found it quite hard to catch on. So, we're going to make it as easy and entertaining as possible for you. But you must understand it, because your life depends on it. I think I was about 4.5 years old when some adoring aunt bought me my first balloon. I understand I had a pretty good time with it too, until some rotten little kid from next door came along and stuck a pin in it. Well, here we are quite a few years later with yet another balloon.
At the surface, the balloon is approximately the same size as the diver's head. But let's take this same balloon to a depth of 33 feet. Now the balloon is smaller than the diver's head. This is because of the increased pressure surrounding the balloon. The volume of the air in the balloon or any flexible airspace will change with any change in pressure. At sea level, the atmospheric pressure is 14.7 pounds per square inch. We call that 1 atmosphere. 33 feet of seawater also equals 1 atmosphere. So at 33 feet, we're under 2 atmospheres, double the pressure. At 66 feet, we're at 3 atmospheres, so the balloon is even smaller. Now let's see the theory of air compression in reverse. The air you breathe at depth is fed to you at the same pressure as the surrounding water. So if we were to fill our balloon at 66 feet and take it to the surface, it would expand and burst on the way up. Now just imagine that balloon is your lung. If you take a breath at depth, hold it and ascend, the air will expand and rupture your lung. Remember our first rule in diving. Breathe deeply and continuously. Never hold your breath. If you observe this simple rule and remember that air expands as you move towards the surface, you should have no problems. Now that we understand the basics of pressure, let's have a look at some of the skills required in your pool sessions. Here our student is breathing normally and comfortably from her second stage. As part of your training, you'll learn to remove the second stage from your mouth, then recover and replace it. Not hard at all. Once the second stage is removed from your mouth, exhale continuously, lightly but continuously. Remember, never hold your breath. To recover the regulator, lower your right shoulder and sweep your arm back past your leg to find the regulator hose with the crook of your arm. Anytime the second stage leaves your mouth, you'll need to clear it before you can breathe from it again. Blow a small puff of air into the mouthpiece or press the purge button to force out any accumulated water. If you use the purge button, your tongue against the mouthpiece will prevent any water going down your throat. You'll also need to be able to clear your mask should it flood or accidentally get knocked off. Here our instructor has let water into his mask. To clear it, he simply tilts his head slightly backwards, lifts the base of the mask away from his face, and exhales through his nose. If the mask has a purge valve, simply look down and breathe out through your nose. Now that we've built up a little confidence, let's move to the deep end of the pool. In order to conserve air, you'll often swim to the dive site on the surface using your snorkel. Kick from the hip, keeping your kick slow and relaxed. Take your time. Remember, this is a non-competitive sport, not a race. Breathing should be slow and natural. Bite gently on the mouthpiece and always exhale before beginning a normal breathing pattern. There's a better than even chance the snorkel will be full of water, and if you breathe in first, it will take a quick shortcut down your throat, probably even cause a cough or two, maybe even 10 or 12. If water does enter the snorkel, a short blast of air will clear most of it. Then inhale cautiously so the air can bypass any residue. Exhale sharply again to complete clearing. In deep water, your buoyancy compensator will keep you floating happily on the surface. In order to descend, it is simply a matter of raising the inflator hose over your head and pressing the deflate button. From the moment you begin to descend, you must equalize the pressure on your ears. Close off your nostrils and blow gently, or swallow. You'll need to begin equalizing immediately on starting your descent and continue every few feet until you're on the bottom. If you experience any discomfort, stop. Ascend until the feeling goes away. Equalize, then continue your descent. If you have a cold, do not attempt to dive under any circumstances. Blocked nasal passages could cause serious ear damage. Now that you're on the bottom, you may feel a little nervous, but you'll also be excited. Your apprehension will soon disappear, but the excitement will stay forever. You've already cleared your mask in the shallow end of the pool. Now you'll take it a step further. The mask is removed, then replaced. Tilt your head back. Exhale through your nose, and it's back to normal again. It's all a matter of practice and familiarity, just like you got used to removing and recovering your regulator. To swim around without dragging yourself over sharp rocks and coral, you'll want to gain neutral buoyancy. Take hold of the BC inflator mouthpiece in your left hand. Take a breath. Remove the second stage from your mouth and exhale a little air into your BC. You must hold down the oral inflate button as you exhale. Repeat this procedure until you are able to comfortably swim without sinking or soaring. In fact, if you want to perfect this technique, you may want to try this exercise. If you lay face down on the bottom, your body should lift as you inhale, so that you pivot on the tips of your fins. Exhale, and you're back on the bottom. Now, let's make an ascent. Remember, the air in your buoyancy compensator will expand as you ascend. Hold your BC deflate button above your head, prepared to dump air gradually to control the rate of ascent. If the deflate button is not held higher than the rest of the BC, the air can't escape, so be sure you're holding it high enough. In the ocean, you'll need to keep glancing upwards too, to make sure the way is clear and safe. There are no points for surfacing under a ski boat. Your ascent should be less than 60 feet per minute, slower than your smallest bubbles. Above all, keep breathing deeply and slowly. Never hold your breath. The more you dive, the more diving friends you'll make, and the more diving spots you'll visit. No matter where you travel, you'll find a dive shop and fellow divers eager to swap underwater stories. They'll also be your best source of information on local dive sites. There are even hotels that cater specifically to divers, offering gear washdown and storage areas. Avoid heavy or greasy foods during your diving day and drink plenty of fluids to prevent dehydration. But don't even think about drinking alcohol. Your last drink should be no less than 12 hours before your first dive, and nothing alcoholic should ever be consumed during the diving day. Now that you know how to submerge and get back to the surface again, we can progress to entering the ocean from the beach. Before any dive, have a current weather report. Know that conditions are favourable. Feel confident about the dive site. The dive master will always give a briefing on the site. Listen carefully. He will discuss likely depths, entry procedures and points of interest. And always check your equipment thoroughly before any dive. Be aware of any currents, rips or abnormalities in the area. Your instructor will explain in detail the way to recognize currents and rips and how to handle them. As a child, I don't know how many times I was told I was doing things backwards. Here's one occasion where it's perfectly okay. When wearing fins, it's far easier to walk any way but forward. With all equipment in place and breathing from the regulator, enter the water facing your buddy and holding on to each other for balance. As soon as the water's deep enough, turn and swim out beyond the surf, if there is any. A diver down flag should always be displayed to warn passing boats to keep clear. Heading now for open water and the moment you've been working towards since your first day in class. An open water dive into Catalina's spectacular kelp beds. This is a good time to get to know your buddy a little better, plan your dive, check equipment and share the anticipation of the moment. Once in the water, you'll need to be aware of where your buddy is and how he's doing, and be available to give any assistance that might be needed. Entering the ocean from a dive boat like the King Neptune requires a little practice in the giant stride. A few easy to learn steps will have you safely and comfortably in the water. First, partially inflate the buoyancy compensator. Put the regulator in your mouth and check to be sure you have air. Hold your mask and second stage securely so they won't get washed away. Grip your weight belt buckle to prevent accidental release, then giant stride out over the water. The idea is to remain in stride position till you hit the water. Then scissor your legs to slow your fall. As you swim clear, signal OK to the dive master and swap your second stage for the snorkel. OK, now it's your turn. Air in the BC. Regulator check. Firm hold on mask, regulator and belt buckle, and off you go. Good landing, quick surface, signal OK, replace regulator with snorkel, and swim clear of the area. Not bad, eh? Now, remembering to equalise pressure on our ears, we're going to make a descent. Again, every skill you practice here will have been learned in the pool. Even on your very first dive, you'll come into contact with all sorts of marine life. All dives should be planned from beginning to end. The amount of time spent underwater is most important, as is the maximum depth reached and the amount of time spent at that depth. In order that we can dive safely within allowable limits, dive tables have been developed. These tables must be followed rigidly in order to avoid decompression sickness, commonly known as the bends. Your instructor will explain dive tables in detail. It is most important that you have a thorough knowledge of what they are and how they work. You cannot and must not attempt to dive armed only with what you've been shown on this tape. All dives must stay well within the limits of your dive tables, or decompression sickness will occur. To make communication possible underwater, there are a few hand signals you must know. The hand raised like this means stop. A palm down horizontal wobble means something is wrong. The classic thumb and index finger OK. By now you've probably got this one on your own. Holding the arm outstretched with a clenched fist warns of danger. The fist should point to the direction of the threat. Thumb pointing up means exactly that. Let's go up. The reverse, logically, is the thumbs down. Let's go down. It does not mean throw him to the sea lions. A clenched fist tapping on the chest means I'm low on air. And a flat hand pulled across the throat, I'm out of air. Which leads us to the sign for sharing your air or buddy breathing. Just tap the second stage. Finally, buddy up and I'll lead, you follow. At the surface, one or both hands raised and waving is the distress signal. And to say I'm okay, both hands meet above the head. Or if one hand is occupied, the remaining hand touches the top of the head, making a smaller circle. When the required depth has been reached on any dive, it is essential you have some idea of where you're going. Even Columbus got this bit right. Before entering the water, check to see which way the current is running. You're far better to swim against the current when beginning your dive than at the end of it. Take your compass and see what direction you're going to be swimming in. Your compass should have a lubber line and a movable bezel, which can be set over the compass heading to give a reference. Turns can be made simply and accurately, even in the murkiest water, by adjusting the bezel by 90 degrees, or however far you wish to change course. There are 360 degrees on a compass, so to turn 180 would turn you completely about face. When you descend, you'll find the currents lessen and you'll be able to follow your pre-planned path. On arrival at your destination, it is then easy to return using both the current and the reciprocal or reverse of the course you followed initially, or as we said earlier, a turn of 180 degrees. A compass is a great help in all but the clearest of waters, and you'll learn about it in more detail in your SCUBA certification course. A careful diver will stick with his buddy and keep an eye on his submersible pressure gauge to avoid running out of air. In order to be prepared though, you should know the 4 out-of-air procedures. The safest of these is an alternate air source ascent, using your buddy's octopus. Maintaining cross-arm buddy contact will prevent the regulator hose from kinking or being pulled from your mouth. Kick to the surface, breathing normally. Now, suppose you run out of air and your buddy's not in easy reach. You must get to the surface on your own using an emergency swimming ascent. Do not remove your regulator or weight belt. Exhaling all the way, swim to the surface. Don't hold your breath. The air in your lungs will be expanding as you ascend, so you should have plenty of air. When your buddy doesn't have an alternate air source, but is close enough to share air, use the buddy breathing ascent. Notice how each diver takes 2 quick breaths, then passes the mouthpiece, gripping the second stage to ensure proper control. Close buddy contact must be maintained with the free hand. Once a rhythm has been established, the buddy team begins the ascent, remembering to exhale whenever the regulator is not in the mouth.
There's one other emergency option, one we hope you'll never have to use. It's the emergency buoyant ascent. This is used as a last resort procedure, like an out-of-air situation on a deep dive when your buddy's nowhere in sight. The weight belt is removed and dropped, and an ascent is made with a continual exhalation of air. Remember, this is a last resort procedure, and another good reason why buddies should stick together and not wander off alone, being great pioneers in the world of the unknown.
Almost all emergency procedures can be avoided if you remember to check your submersible pressure gauge frequently. If it reads 500 pounds or less, prepare to service immediately. Stick to that margin of safety, and odds are you'll never have to resort to an emergency ascent. Most cases of overexertion occur at the surface. This can usually be averted by the use of proper navigation techniques. Try to surface as close to your exit point as possible. However, should one of you find yourself getting tired during your surface swim, both you and your buddy should know a couple of tired diver toes. The tank toe involves simply grasping the tired diver's tank valve and slowly kicking, making sure you've both got buoyancy. Another alternative is placing your buddy's fins on your shoulders and slowly pushing him until he's rested enough to continue on his own. Occasionally, a diver will suffer leg cramps. Cramps are easily relieved by grasping the fin tip and gently pulling it towards you while your buddy massages the cramped area. There may be a time when you want to remove equipment in the water, when diving from a small dinghy, for instance, where vaulting back into the boat in all your gear is all but impossible. Removing your weight belt first is the logical choice, making sure to hold the end opposite to the buckle so the weights don't slip off. It's always easier to don the weight belt laying face down in the water. With the weight on your back, it'll be much easier to secure the buckle. To remove your buoyancy compensator, slip your left arm out and swing the BC in front of you. This will be easier to do if there's not too much air in the jacket, but there should still be comfortable buoyancy. To get back into the BC, lay a tank down in the water with the valve and regulator facing you. Put both arms through the armholes, then, breathing from the regulator, lift tank and all over your head. Again, your instructor will help you perfect this and other equipment replacement techniques. Most dive boats have a swim step for easy exits.
Great time. Nice and clear, huh? Oh, beautiful. Beautiful out here.
Pass your fins up to the dive master or deckhand. Then climb to the deck. You can avoid a bump on the head by waiting for the preceding diver to clear the ladder. Occasionally, a surprise visitor will make an ascent with you. This little critter had to be carefully returned to his home among the rocks. Don't take anything from the sea unless it's legal size and you plan to eat it. When you use your gear in chlorinated or salt water, rinse it with fresh water as soon as possible. Chlorine, salt and sun will cause deterioration, corrosion and build-up of corrosive sublimation. And if you don't want to know what corrosive sublimation is, wash your gear in fresh water after every use. Now you can really start to enjoy this magical world. With a few dives under your belt, you may want to continue your education and take an advanced course or specialty course, maybe even continue on to Dive Master. Whatever your ambition, remember the basic rules. Always dive with a buddy. Always breathe slowly and deeply. Never ever hold your breath. And always dive within the limits of safety. Throughout this tape, we've covered most of the basic points involved in your certification course, But we stress the fact this tape is not a course on scuba and must only be used to make learning easier during a recognised diving course. We hope it has been of assistance to you in gaining your certification and that you'll refer to it for many years to come. Dive safely and enjoy.
And if you'd like to try something really awesome, come and join me on the Great Barrier Reef. Now that I've been to America and learned to dive, I'm headed back there, not just as an observer, but as a fully fledged scuba diving participant. I can't wait. See you on the bottom, mate. Number 12.